Today I'd like to ask you to look at a big picture. If you can imagine with me a little family at the bottom of the Gloucester tree in Western Australia in Pemberton. Anyone been there? Yeah, very tall tree, but has a top chopped off it. And my family, wife and with our three kids, we were down there and we wanted to climb this tree. The eldest and the youngest wanted to, but the middle child didn't. And so I climbed up, and my daughter was behind me, and the son was behind, and you climb up, you go around the tree, and all you have is a bit of Rio, about so wide, maybe a bit more, and it's banged into the side of the tree, and you just climb up, and you get up to 53 metres high, which is how high? How high would this be? You'd be 4 metres high here. So you go 10 fours are 40, yeah. You go 12 fours are 48. 5 12s are 60. I'm not sure what I'm calculating, but you put 12 fours are 40, put 12 or 13 buildings on top of each other, and that's how high this tree was. And in 1947, they actually established this as one of the 12 fire lookouts around Western Australia, down the southwest. Huge amount of trees, huge amount of eucalypts, and when fire goes through, all sorts of things can happen. And this is what they decided to get right up at top, as high as they could get, and have a large lookout, which was the big picture of Western Australia down in the southwest. It's a magic sort of thing to do, and it was moist and it was cold when we went up. Our hands were starting to, and my daughter came down after me, and I was making sure that just in case I had one hand free, I could catch her if she slipped. But luckily enough, we all got down safely. And then we looked up at this tree and thought, man, it looks much higher from when you're on top than it does when you're from down bottom. But sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees. We get up so close to some sort of detail that we lose perspective. So today I'd like to spend a little bit of time looking at a big picture. I have had an experience which lasted a couple of years, and it's centred around a little book which I was given when I was a kid. And I think this is the copy. A little book. In fact, it's unique in the sense that the person who wrote it was a woman, and she's the most translated woman in the world. The second most translated person after Lenin, the Russian dictator. It's the only book that she's added to when it was first published, and it's the only book that someone else claimed to have written that she wrote, that she claimed to have written. And it is also the most translated book that she has in over 160 languages it's printed. So you probably ask, well, what's so special about this book? Well, I've just told you. Have you been listening? This little book called Steps to Christ is one of those books which, how many of you are familiar with this book? How many of you have read it? And how many of you read it regularly? A couple. Well, today I'm going to spend the rest of the time looking at 4 significant words in this book. And you ask, how do I know that they're the 4? Well, I'll give you a grid here. Now, you've never counted words, have you? Only in an essay that you had to write for school. But I've actually counted them. You think that I'm joking? No, it's taken a long time to do that. But I found the 4 most significant words that she uses. Can you guess which would be the most, not the prepositions and the conjunctions or the definite articles. I'm talking about words that mean something. Guess what the first one is, the most used word that she has in this book? Seeing you've read it, you should be able to tell me. Love, did someone say? You're close. Yeah. Yeah. The most used word. No. Come on, pretend you're at school. No, that's the slacker's way of doing it. It's not what you would expect. It's a 3-letter word. Yes, the most used word is the word sin. In a book called Steps to Christ, the most used word is sin. Why would you think that she would use that word to such a degree that it's the most used? Well, I'll give you a couple of what I think may be the reason, is because you need to know who the enemy is. How many of you play sport, in team sport? One person. Okay, this illustration's not going to work real well, is it? How many of you follow rugby league? 3 people. What do you do here? Pretend you're on a team, okay? Cricket. Any cricket? I've lost the point what I'm making now. Oh, yes. Cricket. We all know Australian cricketers play really well in Test cricket, but they're hopeless at one day. They've lost 12 of the last 14 games they've played. But you need to know who the enemy is. And who's the enemy this year? England is the enemy. They're always the enemy. Even when they're not playing, they're always the enemy. And however, have you ever watched a rugby league game in the middle of winter when it's either raining and the ground is a quagmire and you can't really tell one team from the other? Have you ever watched a game like that? I've watched one game like that and I was thinking, how do they know who to pass the ball to? They all look brown, they all look dirty, but they know who the enemy is because they've learned to hear the voice of their teammates. And we need to know who the enemy is. There's a book written by a lady, Priscilla, Queen of the, what's her name? Priscilla Shearer. And any of you watched the movie War Room, a Christian movie? Well, she is the African-American lady who has beautiful hair, and she is a centre character of this movie. And she has written, subsequent to that, she wrote a book called Fervent. And what I like about this book, even though it's written for women, there are some blokey sort of things in it. And the blokey thing is at the beginning, she says, if I was the devil, I would. And then she has chapters listed. I would make you busy. I would get you diverted, all those sorts of things. And she really highlights the fact that we need to know who the enemy is. Because if we don't know the enemy, you don't know who is your ally. Any of you love wartime stories? YouTube's full of them. And when I'm by myself at home, I watch those. When someone else is at home, we don't watch them. So I love watching these things, and some of the stuff that they get into, messages on dots and all of the subterfuge that they went through. And when they cracked the Enigma code, that was one of the major things. They learned who the enemy was. They learned what the enemy was doing and what the enemy would do, and the Germans had no clue as to what was going on. And that's how the war was won, basically. So here we talk about sin being the most used word, and because this is so serious, that is why the next word is so important. Who said love? Love is the second most used word. Because we know who the enemy is, that is why love can then work with the enemy. Work against the enemy. Because love is that thing which drives us away from the enemy. It counters the force that evil has. One of the things that you see love demonstrated is if you go through the characters of the Old Testament. Moses. Did God show love to Moses? What about Abraham? Telling lies about his wife. Did God show love to Abraham? Definitely. In fact, Paul talks about it in Romans 4. What about David, our friend King David? How many of you have committed things like David has done? Murdered anyone? Not recently, okay. You know, we talk about these characters and we gloss over them, but you know, for a king, absolute power, no one could contradict him. He goes and gets a woman, finds she's married, gets her pregnant, and then gets the husband to go to the front line of the war and has him killed. I think that's premeditated, don't you? You can't do that sort of stuff. Or an accident, sorry, sir, that kind of thing. What about Peter? The Apostle Peter. Swears that he doesn't even know the Lord. Moments before the cock crows 3 times and he remembers that Jesus says, you know, things are going to happen. Mark my word. What about Thomas? Was he a disciple, Thomas? He'd been with Jesus. He'd seen what Jesus had done. He'd told him 3 days' time, I'm going to be raised. And here the disciples say, we've seen him. He's alive. And he says, no, I won't believe it until I touch his side and I see his handprint. Love can come to you in any shape or form. No matter who you are, no matter what you've done, there is a character in the Bible who has done worse. So take heart. This is a positive story, isn't it? The answer is yes. Ultimately, the story of Jesus and salvation. So they're the 2 most used words, 206 and 204 times respectively. What do you think the 3rd most common word is? And you have no idea, so I won't even wait. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Rex to hand this out. Barry, you might be able to help him. Because in the centre spread, it has a diagram which I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to. And you think I've created this just for Bega? No, the answer is no. I did this at my church last year and I had some left over and I thought, what a good way to use them. We have 30 copies, so we'll have to see how we go. You want one, Barry? Rex, you going? Here you go. You'll notice the centre spread, and it is 6 concentric circles. It starts off in the middle with the word what? There's 3 words in the middle. Heart, spirit, and will. The next circle is mind. That's the area of volition. And the next one is body. They're the 3 we're going to spend a little bit of time with this morning. The The third most used word is the word heart. Now, when the way in which we get to use this word in our parlance is, I love you with all my heart. You know, Valentine comes up, do you put noughts and crosses? Well, you put hearts, don't you? Skull and crossbones wouldn't work. We all know what a heart means, and we use this word because we think the heart is where love comes from. If you were a Hebrew person, you would say, I love you with all my kidneys, because they believed the kidneys were the place that emotions flowed from. And so here, the Old Testament believers talked about heart different to mind. That the heart is the command centre of all of your being, or your spirit, or your will. Let's talk. You understand the will, don't you? The will is used for big decisions. Will I go to college? Will I get married? Will I buy a house? Will I divorce my wife? All those big decisions which come across your mind every now and then, you make large decisions, they're from the will. Or losing, how many of you decided to lose weight this year? Everyone wants to lose weight except Rex. But when you lose weight, you make a big decision. Yeah, I'm going to sign up to Jenny Craig or whatever you're going to sign up to. And once you've signed up, the reality hits you, doesn't it? And your will seems to be quite weak when that cream cake or that beautiful apple tart or something's put in front of you. My view is you can't say no to a hostess, so you have as much as you can. And that's why some of us are larger than others. But when you choose to lose weight, rarely do they say just will to do it. You use your willpower. None of them say that. They say, let's follow a training program. And they train, the idea is to train you to learn the kind of portion sizes, the kind of food you eat, and the times you eat. It's a training program, and the heart, the will, loses its importance once you have a training program in place. However, the will is that, or the heart, or the spirit, is that thing that gives you direction. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to change my job. But once you've made that big decision, the will has very little influence when it comes to the day-to-day minutiae. That is where the mind becomes important. You know, Paul says in Colossians 3, set your hearts on things above, not on earthly things. Set your mind on things above. He uses this word, he doesn't use it to replace the other word, but he uses it to say the mind and the heart are significant. King David in Psalm 51, he says, create in me a clean heart, O God. Renew a right spirit within me. And in Ezekiel it talks about removing the stony heart and I'll give you a heart of flesh. The word heart is that driving force that gives you direction. And when you fall and slip, that's not change of direction, is it? How many have been on a cross-country run? 1, 2. Have you ever tripped on a cross-country run? Yeah? But did you say, well, it's all gone, it can't do it anymore? Or did you keep on going? Kept on going, didn't you? See, you can fall and you can trip, but you still have your direction. And that is why the heart is so important. The heart is the place where God wants to touch each of you. It's not your habits, first of all. It's not your mind, first of all. It's not your body. He wants to get to the heart of you, that thing which drives you to make you make decisions one way or the other. And each of us, whether we yes or whether we no, we each use this centre portion of our being to give us that direction and that impetus. The mind is that other thing which we need to train, because the mind has the ability to make selections of things we'll choose. The heart gives you your direction. The mind gives you the ability to stick to that direction. But your body is the thing which is the most difficult to control. Ever found that to be the case? We're doing something artificial here, aren't we? We're chopping bits and pieces off us. But the thing that is sitting on the chair, that part of you which is the thing that can be cut and hurt and bled, that part of you is that which is a bundle of habits. And most of life is habit-driven, isn't it? When you got in your car this morning, did you think, ooh, what do I do first? I've got to start it, don't I? Well, what do I do? If you've got a manual, put the clutch in, you turn it on. Now what do I do? Oh, you didn't do that, did you? When you were learning to drive, that's what you did, wasn't it? Yeah? Well, some of you can't really drive even though you push a car around. When you learnt to drive, you were very conscious of what you had to do. I think I had a few driving lessons. I used to drive on a farm and places like that, but it had this woman I won't go into too much detail, very attractive. And she was scantily clad. Let us say that's what we will say. And she got me into the car, and she says, let's go. So I put the clutch in, started the car. She says, turn it off. No, that's not where we start. Check the mirror. Check the mirrors. Okay, go through the routine. You turn your head so she can see you checking. And we drove up the road, did a backing, and then went to the cop shop, and she spent half an hour chatting up the cops. I believe she had a routine, a habit, that she dressed in a certain way that would attract male policemen. She'd tell them, this guy's fine, and she probably had other things which she was negotiating with them, but that is not really good for church, is it? We won't go there, even though King David did it as well. Our heart is the place where God wants to touch you first, because it gives direction. Your mind is the thing which selects options, but your body is a bundle of habits that often responds to desire rather than selection. Any of you understand what I'm saying? No. Over the top of your head? No? Who understands what I'm saying? Put your hand up. You're all looking like you're on holidays. I am, yeah. Well, let's go to the fourth word. Guess what the fourth word is? It's the most used word in all of her writing that she uses. She's a Methodist, and she believes in prayer. Over 12,000 times she uses this word in various forms in her writing. It's too many to count. But prayer is the fourth most used word in this book. One of the things which surprises me is that she has some stuff which is really interesting. She says prayer is the opening of the heart. Oops, here we go. Prayer is the opening of the heart to God as to a friend. It's not opening your mind, it's not opening it's the opening of that centre part of your being, that part of the being that gives you direction and impetus. Prayer is the opening of that centre point of who you are So when we have community prayer, what are we doing? We are communally confessing the God who we serve. But you cannot have a Christian experience, a vital or a growing Christian experience, without private prayer. Jesus says, don't pray as the Pharisees. Go into your room, close the door, pull the blinds, and then pray to your God in secret, who will reward you in secret. Because in secret prayer, in private prayer, that is the only place in the universe where you can confess something and no one else know. That is significant. The Bible talks to us, that's God talking to us. Prayer is us talking to God. And this conversation that occurs between God and us doesn't have to be on your knees. It can be while you're driving. It can be while you're peeling potatoes. It can be while you're on holidays. It can be when you're in a car accident. You don't have to have a select time. Select time might be good, but a select time is not necessary. So today we've spent a little bit of time looking at this little book. I have actually enjoyed reading this book. I've done a paraphrase. Paraphrase is the same ideas in different language. And if you haven't got a copy of this, I've got some out which you can get when we finish up. But this little book, I believe, is a little book which you should read every year. You've got a copy, you will have a copy in regular English rather than the old world these and thous. And I would like you to consider reading it this year. The document that you have, which has been handed out, is 13 chapters in there, and there are 13 chapters in this book as well. And those 13 summaries are the summaries of the ideas found in each of the chapters. So you may find that of value too. So today, what have we said? The big picture is about sin and love that counters sin. It is the heart that love wants to transform. Set your hearts on things above, not on earthly things, Paul says. And it is through prayer that the heart is bound tighter to God. I would encourage you to spend some time this year looking at this little book, getting the ideas behind it. Now, one idea she says, there is much prayer, there is much study of the Bible that is without benefit and in fact a positive injury. Do you believe she would have said that? Your heads are very still. Do you think I'm pulling your leg? No. There is much study of the Bible that is without benefit and in fact is a positive injury. Those are not my words, I'm just quoting. So don't ring the conference president. I still have a job. I need to have a job. There are things in this book which will actually open your eyes to the nature of the Christian walk with God. You are on a journey. Your will sets the direction of that journey. Love drives that journey. And that journey needs to be centred from the heart. And as you do, talk to God through prayer.